Good morning and welcome to the special edition of my live comments, the Saturday special. We are increasingly hearing that there is a sexual abuse, that there is a spousal abuse, and abuse of all sorts is increasing. What is abuse? It is essentially the desire to feel superior if you are not superior, and to control and to dominate. For the abusers, more often than not, communication is not about understanding. It's about winning or losing the game. And since they are not efficient enough to communicate, they indulge in verbal abuse and or violence to accomplish this. They are self-centered, they are unreasonable, they are insensitive, unforgiving, they lack empathy, and mostly they are jealous as well. Their moods can shift from fun-loving to romantic to sullen and to angry. Some are aggressive passive, the other are passive passive. But it is always their way or the highway. Bullies they are. And typically, abusers deny any responsibility and shift the blame to their co-workers, to their loved ones, to their partners. But one thing they have in common is their motive to have the upper hand. This is because they feel that personal power, regardless of the worldly success, is essential for them. And they behave that way, they are treated growing up and their insecurity, the way they have been brought up, the way they have seen their parents behave, the way they have seen their relations behave. And out of that sense of shame and inferiority complex that they have been there, they indulge in abuse. And abuse damages the self-esteem of the abused person. So, we should realize that what is that which encourages abuse, increases abuse rather than suppressing it, rather than reducing it. Without outside support or compromised self-esteem, which leads to self-doubt, insecurity, isolation, and increased dependency on the abuser. So, how do we ensure that abuse does not take place? But before I talk of the strategies that can stop abuse, let's know the mistakes which increase abuse. The first is appeasement. Most of the abused victims try to placate the abuser to de-escalate the conflict. They think that let them satisfy the anger. And this act of appeasement only empowers the abuser who sees it as a weakness. And the weakness is an opportunity to exert more control. Similarly, pleading, please don't do it, it's not desirable, I'm hurting, sends the same message. Second quality that increases abuse is the quality of arguing. Verbal fights with an abuser lead to more resentment, especially if the abused victim is logical and reasonable. So he wants to argue on logic, and that makes the abuser resent the victim all the more, and the anger escalates and the abuse increases. Third is explaining and defending. When you are wrong, then of course you have to argue, but if you are wrongly blamed, if you are a victim of abuse, whether it's verbal or it's physical, trying to defend yourself and explain yourself beyond a simple denying, a false accusation, leaves you more open to abuse. An abuser would never believe in explanation, and defending yourself only adds fuel to the fire. This behavior, normally of explaining and defending, is a desire to seek the abuser's approval. But the motive of the abuser is to have power over you. And when you are seeking approval, this absolutely dovetails with the abuser's modus operandi. So thus, explaining yourself, defending yourself sends a message. You have power over my self-esteem. You have a right to approve or disapprove of me. You are entitled to be my judge. This sense of entitlement increases abuse. And the fourth is trying to seek understanding from the abuser. Now, abuser is a pathetic creature. Let's be very clear. Violence is a sign of being pathetic. So it's a fuel objective to make a pathetic person see the reason. And yet when you seek understanding from the abuser, they don't want to understand you. They simply want you to carry out what they want to do. And the victim has a mistaken notion that by trying to explain, try to understand the motive of the abuser, they can get away from it. The abuser is only interested in winning a conflict and having a superior position. Arguing over the facts is thus irrelevant. Most abusers are not interested in facts, and they are justifying their position. And the fifth most important reason of increasing the capability of the abuser to abuse you is criticizing. So both understanding and criticizing are harmful. Abusers are feeling insecure. So when you criticize them, their fragility increases, their rage increases, their vindictiveness increases. So you have to confront the abusers directly. You have to be assertive and communicate your names. It's fine to name abuse for what it is. Neither explaining, nor arguing, nor trying to understand, not criticizing, not appeasement would help you reduce the abuse. So how to deal with the abuse? Please give me a minute. Sorry for the interruption. So what should be a strategy you should adopt to deal with abuse? The first is get information. People in abusive relationship tend to be codependent. While you depend on them, they are also dependent on you. And your accepting the abuse is increasing your dependence on them. They think that since you are dependent on them, they can misuse you or abuse you, whatever they want. So try to understand the person's motive in abusing you and get around that. Second is get support, whether it's support from within yourself or whether it is from individuals, your friend circle, or it is from therapy, or it's a law and order situation. Get the support, internal as well as external, social as well as legal. You are not a doormat to be on which anybody can wipe the shoes. No. You are not a victim. You are not a person to be treated and abused. So what you do is get the support, and then also get the support not only for yourself but also for the abuser. Maybe he's an alcoholic, so go to Alcoholic Anonymous. Maybe his mental issue, then go to a psychiatrist. Let him go to a psychiatrist when he's in a proper position of mind, when he's not abusing you. Ask him to see a psychiatrist. And if he doesn't do it, and if it becomes physical and violent, leave the person. Then detach. When the words are there, as long as it's not physical, do not react. Do not take personally. Ignore, learn to ignore. And most important is raise your own self-esteem. The abused person often has low self-esteem. And when you have low self-esteem, anybody can abuse you. Try to assert yourself, as I said. And this way, when you try to gain your self-esteem, will give you a sense of reality, give you more options, and you will be able to confront the abuser. Stop any self-criticism. Rebuild your self-worth. And of course, when you are having self-esteem, you will be assertive. Learn to be assertive. Don't be passive. Don't explain. Don't placate. Don't criticize. And don't be aggressive. But be assertive. Say something. And then, set the boundaries. An abuser and abused, since they're codependent, you have to set the boundaries. Well, you can criticize me when I do something wrong, but these are the limits. You shall not raise the voice. You shall not do in public. You shall not come within 2 feet of mine. Maintain physical distance. What I mean is you have to have your space. And along with the physical space, then you have the mental space by ignoring the abuse, if it's verbal. If it's physical, give a warning that next time it happens, you are going to take the help of the law and order forces. Being assertive, having your self-esteem, getting support will get you, and help set boundaries. And when you're dealing with somebody highly defensive or with a personality disorder, then you have to deal with that as well. Be strategic. If there's a danger, just try to tide over, and as soon as possible, remove yourself from the position of being abused. When you are assertive, when you set the boundaries, when you have self-esteem to look at the abuser in the eye and tell him that this is not acceptable, you will not be abused. 90% of the cases, an abuser is a mental nutcase. And abused is basically suffering from Stockholm syndrome. They have a certain sneaking sympathy with the abuser, and many a time they invite the abuse. When they invite the abuse and then they're abused, they can crib about it, and that cribbing gives them certain solace, certain peace of mind, And thirdly, some abusers suffer from a complex, being saintly complex. Stop being saintly. Be a human being. Stop being a martyr. That's not your job. And when the abused person becomes a martyr, adopts a saintly attitude, it prompts the abuser to increase the abuse. And that is not acceptable at all under any circumstances. Be yourself, assert, have self-esteem, set boundaries, get support. And that would enable you to face abuser and to tide over the difficulties. And you will not have a problem with the abuser because you have put the bully in his place or in her place. So stop being a saint, stop being a sufferer, be self-confident, self-assertive, strategic, full of self-esteem, have an ego, have a sense of assertion. Be yourself. Don't be a doormat, and you will not be used as a doormat. Nobody rubs their shoes on an upright doormat. So be upright. And this way, learn from the mistakes, adopt the proper strategy as I've suggested, and you'll be free from abuse. Thank you.